Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to our Monday edition for video on World of Warships. And today we will not be featuring any battle footage of that nature, but we're going to be talking about improving yourself as a player in World of Warships. So some things I've done to help with that. So advice on how to get good. So I'm going to share with you some of my experience of where I currently stand at in World of Warships. I'm going to share what helped me improve significantly a while back. And then also we're going to look at putting that to use in this video today. So not sure I'm going to title this video, but just advice on how to improve yourself as a player, some things that I have done that have helped me. So we are on the WoW stats and numbers, the North American NA, to be able to look at my profile. They have one for other servers as well. So if you're like on the EU, the Asian server, whatnot, you can go and look at your stats here. But this is really detailed, specific stats that help you explore. I mean, one, you can look up players, you can look up clans, you can look up warships here. But it's really of good use even for yourself if you're trying to look at something to better help improve yourself in the game of World of Warships, where there might be some weaknesses, where you can identify what your strengths are, so on and so forth. And there's different filters that you can even look through over here as well, and kind of seeing how things are shaping up for you as a player. So basically what I'm going to share, maybe you too can sit down and use the same method process in maybe 5 or 10 minutes. That simple, that easy to figure out. Maybe if there's you're struggling with a certain ship, certain tier, nation of ships, and you're trying to figure out how do I break through that, then just simply being able to stop, set aside 5-10 minutes, and write down what is it that you are struggling with at that tier. So for example, this example I'm going to give that helped me improve better. Probably it's about over a year ago. As I was playing the game, probably a year and a half ago. Yeah, it was a year and a half ago. I was realizing that as I was going up the tiers, as your new player, if you start off at tier 1 and you're ascending the tiers, once I got to the higher tiers, I was having a lot of issues in playing the game, particularly in destroyers. And so I decided one day, like, hey, I'm just going to sit down and try to write this out and figure out what it is I'm messing up on. Like, I'm not that I'm blaming my team, but I'm coming back to the mentality. And there's some videos I'm going to share at the end of this, because mentality is a huge thing when it comes to improving yourself as a player. And I've talked at length on that. But saying, what am I doing wrong? What are some incorrect positioning issues I'm making? Do I not know some of the enemy ships well and their characteristics, so on and so forth. So basically I identified, I'm going to write this down, and then we're going to use it as another example. Currently, there's a ship, a nation I'm struggling with. So at this point in time, it was destroyers, right? So I was like, okay, so what tier is it that I'm struggling with right now? And so I wrote down that it was tier 8, and I'm even writing this out now as we speak. So tier 8. And I'm like, okay, what has changed from tier 7 to tier 8? And I realized that in that transition, when you're playing tier 8 ships, if you're bottom tier, you're facing all the way up to tier 10 ships as well. And I realized that radar was a big thing that changes at that tier. I didn't realize it until I got to thinking about it, but I was reflecting on, okay, what are these ways? How do I keep dying? So on and so forth. So it was radar. And maybe I can try to write something or put something post-editing on the screen too. So I was by radar. Okay, so tier 8, radar. And where am I usually dying at on the map? Is it certain maps? Is it just in general? And for me, it was just in general. And it was around the caps, the capture points. Capture points were an issue for me as a DD player. So I'm like, okay, so when I die, it's usually around caps. Okay, and then how far into the game is it? How much time has progressed in the battle when I'm usually dying? And I roughly guessed it was probably in the first 5 to 10 minutes I was dying in a destroyer. So I kind of looked at that, and then I was trying to figure out my positioning, so on and so forth. So it seemed the first issue was tier 8, tier 7, tier 8. There's a change there in ships you're facing, especially when you're bottom tier. There's more radar. I was dying around capture points, trying to contest those and capture them for my team, and it was in 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, so this was what I was struggling with as a destroyer player. So then I realized from that, okay, so how do I improve as a destroyer player when I'm looking at these 4 things in particular, and some mental things to break through. So improving, write that down. So first it was, okay, just accepting that things change when you go from tier 7 to tier 8 as a destroyer player, because again, if you're bottom tier, you're facing more radar. The hydroacoustic search of ships, a lot of them begin to grow in range, where the German battleships get up to 6 kilometers into being able to detect you at tier 9, I think that is. And then, others are tier 5 kilometers, and you have other hydroacoustic search that's, let's say, the short range hydro that the British often get, that 3 kilometer hydro range. So running more into that, and what I was used to previously as a shorter player, I would say tier 7 and lower, especially if you're not facing, bottom tier, like tier 7 versus tier 9 matchmaking. But usually, even in the mid to lower tiers, you can pretty much step on a cap early in the game, because you don't have to worry about the threat of radar. Some torpedoes don't necessarily always have the range to reach you, so on and so forth. There's factors in there, but things change. So I was like, okay, radar, I'm getting killed by radar a lot. So I need to know what ships have radar. So then there is a list that I have saved actually as a bookmark on my web browser that shows me what ships have radar, and I'll put that link in the description of this video. And I had to start learning what ships had radar. But not only that, but what is the range of radar? Because radar can go anywhere from, I think, 7.5 kilometers up to the 12 kilometers. So for example, if there's a cruiser that has, the American heavy cruisers, they have 10 kilometers. I'm like, okay, that, what I want to use as an example, the Buffalo, that enemy Buffalo, he's 11 kilometers away. I can still step onto the cap and be fine. But, if it's something like, Russian cruiser, which those usually always have 12 kilometer radar, then, that's an issue for me. Probably won't be able to step on the cap. So I was realizing, okay, I'm dying generally around capture points, then maybe I should be more patient. So that was another thing I wrote down, be more patient, because I was dying in that first 5 to 10 minute window. So I decided then, okay, so I need to figure out what radar ships are in the area first. I'm writing that down. Are in the area. And you're not going to know that until they become spotted, as an example. I always try to highlight, that your first, when you're going to enter a battle, the team lineup, I look at the enemy team, I'm like, okay, what ships does the enemy have that has radar? Battleship, cruiser, destroyer, what do those ships have radar? And then I note that to self, so then when I go into battle as a destroyer and I'm approaching the cap, and trying to see what's happening, we can go from there. So then basically what I do is maybe I approach a cap, but I don't step on it yet. Maybe I'm using some island cover, but I'm spotting to see what is coming. Is there enemy cruisers in the area? And then once it's deemed safe or not safe, if it's safe, I'll step onto the cap. If I don't feel it's safe yet, I'll pull back. Maybe that means I let the enemy cap at first, but then usually they kind of let their guard down after they've taken the cap, and then maybe I'll circle back in, or I need the support of my teammates and actually able to step onto the cap. Because as a destroyer player, there's these two mentalities, right? I'm going to write this down from your team. your team will yell at you if you don't cap. So if you don't contest the cap in the first few minutes of the match, your team usually yells at you in chat, right? Okay, so then it's like, okay, so what if I do go ahead and cap in the very beginning? Well, if you cap and die in the first few minutes of the match, your team will still yell at you. So it's kind of one of those situations, it's danged if you do, danged if you don't. But there's maturity as a player if you realize, I just need to be patient and wait. I can't give in to the peer pressure of team chat if they're yelling at me to cap. I need to identify what are the radar cruisers, where are they at, so on from there. So I implemented these things. So I started learning what ships have radar, what are the radar distances. I began practicing being more patient, identifying what radar ships are in the area, what destroyers may I be going up against, and then understanding the mentality that I'm kind of danged if I do, danged if I don't. I had to ignore chat, basically, when it comes to if, players are yelling at me, teammates are yelling at me to cap in the very beginning of the match, or knowing that they're going to yell at me too if I cap and immediately die because, hey, there's a Petropavlovsk and there's a Des Moines sitting on this cap. So I can't get anywhere near this cap. You guys have to kill the radar before I can actually go in. But I'll hang in the area, I'll spot torpedoes for you from the enemy destroyers, so on and so forth. A destroyer player that lives in the last half of the battle is such a huge threat. When you lose all your destroyers in the first 5 to 10 minutes of a match, your team's basically screwed. So being a destroyer player and being alive for the last half of the battle is fantastic. It really helps you. So kind of been leaving this, what you're seeing on idle. But if we look at, I went up too far. I mean, you can see as a destroyer player in random battles, and this takes into account playing in divisions, playing alone. I'm 62.76% rating, Unicum rating as a destroyer player. And before this, my win rating as a destroyer player was probably 52, 51%. And over the past year, I've been able to improve it just because I sat down for those 5 or 10 minutes to figure this out, right? So if you are struggling with a certain ship, certain class, certain nation, it's best to try to sit this down and kind of write out what's happening to you. You're kind of being like a doctor. You're trying to, what are the symptoms? How are you sick? And then here are the remedies of how we're going to improve you. Like, that's just the mentality how to approach it that I'd recommend in my opinion. So then let's talk through a real example of what I'm struggling with right now in the game. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about these tabs here and helping you review yourself. So right now in the game, you guys have known, if you're subscribed and following along, that I am struggling with the German battleships, specifically the Friedrich der Große and the Große Kurfürst. So you can keep scrolling down and you'll see the warships, battles, win rating, all that. So I'm going down. This is for random battles, right? And should be Friedrich der Große. It's here. I've played 17 battles in it in random battles. I've played more of it also in arms race, so that's not shown here, and maybe 1 or 2 in co-op or something like that. But you can see I have a really poor win rating. It's bad. It's just plain bad, as Wargaming might rate me as a player. Pretty bad with win rating. The damage I have is actually, I think that's great. It's, how do they rate that? I'm forgetting. It's PR. I'm trying to find the bars here. Win rating, PR, damage. So my damage is great. I think that's what the blue stands for. It's very good. And then win rating, average damage, kills. So let's go back down. So yeah, so we're here. So average damage. My average damage is decent. It's pretty good in the Friedrich der Große. My PR looks like, I think that's a good rating. They have like different scales, so it's good. Let's see, what one was that? Was that average frags? That means kills. Is on the poor side. There is room for improvement there. It's I think this is average, because the green, they have 2 colors of green. but it's not the best. There could be room for improvement there. Plane shot down looks good, average. So, but this is a huge problem right here, right? This just tells me that I'm not playing the ship well. I'm struggling with it. And then Grossa Kurfürst, I played my first battle in it the other night in a triple Grossa Kurfürst division with 2 of my clanmates. I played 1 random battle so far. That battle didn't go well. It was a lot of HE spammers, and that was part of the reason for that. And we're going to talk about that. But let's go back up to the Grossa, or the Fedek de Grossa. So we can click on details here. I can see my records, my experience, the highest damage, most warships destroyed. This was actually during a cyclone because the Fedek de Grossa excels at brawling. And when you have a cyclone, you can only see enemy ships up to 8 kilometers away. Aircraft destroyed, 14. So I can see that's pretty good. Spotted. My concealment is pretty bad in the German battleships. So of the standard German battleship line. It's a bit better on that battle cruiser line going up to the Schlieffen. Damage upon spotting. So there's the records. Main battery, I've destroyed 12 warships. So this is 17 battles, and I've only destroyed 12 warships. That's not so great. I mean, it's not always about the kills, it's about the damage you're getting. And you can see the damage that I have been doing was listed as like very good or great. But I would still like to see this number higher. Secondary battery, I've only killed a maximum of 1 ship with secondary battery. It also shows your hit ratio. I mean, this is German dispersion we're talking about, but sometimes, players just juke you and you miss your shots. Torpedoes aircraft by ramming. We haven't rammed anyone yet in the FDG. So then here I can see destroyed warships. For myself as a player, it's below average. I should be higher, and I said that when we were looking at that rating. On the server, compared to the server, I'm actually above server norms in that category for most destroyed. So that's not bad. That's a good thing. Damage, you can see we are above the server average. Aircraft destroyed, we're also above the server average. But when we look at the run rating as a player in the FDG, I am really bad compared to the server. The server norm standard is 48.59% here on the North American server. So we're not doing so hot there when it comes to the run rating in the ship. And I played a lot of arms race battles in this too, because it doesn't count as stats, just because I was really trying to figure out this ship, right? And we've talked about it in when I did a review on the FDG. I showed you guys the battle, and I even titled that video "The Struggle," and talking about what I found has helped the ship work, right? So let's go ahead and do that same formula what I was just discussing. So what tier are we talking about? We're talking about tier 9. Actually, I did pretty good in Bismarck. I don't think I was that bad in Bismarck. I'd have to look at the stats here, but Bismarck seemed to be an enjoyable experience for me. Tier 9. Okay, what is the ship we're talking about? We're talking about a brawling battleship. It's important to note that. So not only, it's a battleship, but it's a brawling battleship. And FDG does really good up close and personal. You're equipped for that. And you're equipped for that because you have secondaries. You have a fantastic hydro acoustic search on the ship. You have really good armor. And I think those are probably the 3 things particularly that makes the FDG really good at being able to brawl. So ideally, let's talk about the weaknesses of the ship. Dispersion, the main battery at distance is really bad. Another weakness of the ship is very large. It's very wide. Large/wide. And we're going to go ahead and say poor concealment, because it does have poor concealment. And the rudder shift is meh, maneuverability is meh. But it's particularly the main battery is a weakness, and then it's very large, wide ship. It has poor concealment, okay? Okay, and how am I typically dying? Usually I'm dying from burning to death, if I'm not mistaken, burning. That's probably not the primary reason. Primary reason of why I'm dying is that in the positions I usually am, I'm too far forward. So too far forward. I've overextended myself. Too far forward. And then again, yeah, I'm not always dying early. How do I phrase this? Like when I'm thinking about timeline. Yeah, I mean we can say usually die, let's say halfway. Let's just say that as an example, but it's partially true. So I'm burning a lot, I'm too far forward, and usually I die halfway through the battle. Okay? So how do we improve that? Let's talk about that real quick. So improving. So it sounds like even though this is a brawling battleship, I have to wait for the opportunity to push. That's how I'll say it. Wait for opportunity to push. The thing with the FDG, and I'm going to say it's probably the same with Ghost of Kurfürst, but I've not played it enough yet to be able to say this, but I can say this with the FDG, is that to me the FDG, it lives and dies by brawling. If you're able to brawl, the ship is fantastic. If you're not able to brawl, you have to play at range, the ship struggles, right? And then the ship really is defined by whether it's able to brawl or not brawl. So if you're having, let's say, this has happened to me multiple times, your flank collapses, like you're being patient, you're kind of waiting to move up, but your flank collapses, maybe your teammates kind of threw themselves in there. Maybe you weren't actually close enough to support them as much as you should have been able to. But when your flank collapses, you have to turn and kite. Usually maybe you're trying to kite an enemy ship within secondary range, but sometimes that's not even an option. Like you're 15, 16 kilometers away and there's 2 Georgias, a French HE spamming cruiser, and then there's a destroyer spamming torpedoes behind you even closer that you can't see. So that is a real struggle because to me the ship does somewhat feel it's team dependent. If your team completely collapses on the flank, it's not like you have torpedoes like the other German battleship line has now at the high tier. So you live by having to kind of fall back and kite away, hoping that your team on the opposite flank has one and can come assist you. So I need to wait for the opportunity to push. So that means I also need to learn how to identify when can I push. Learn when to push. So that means that either, let's say A, the only way I can push is with my teammates. So if my team is pushing a flank, I need to push with them. Pushing with team. Or realizing a golden opportunity to be able to push forward. So that would be like, let's say that the enemy team, like let's say there's a battleship behind an island, there's another cruiser behind an island, the destroyer on their flank is dead already. And that's when kind of the golden opportunity to be able to step out and be able to push that flank. Sometimes being able to push inspires your teammates to push with you. Again, I've talked at length about utilizing the chat. So like saying like, hey guys, like I'm going to push now. Please push with me in a nice way. Don't be a jerk and spamming that with you. So identifying golden opportunities. So I'll just call it golden opportunities. That would also be like, maybe this is C, is like a cyclone. Cyclones are a fantastic time to brawl because you have a 6-kilometer hydro. You detect torpedoes, like 4 kilometers away or something like that. But utilizing a cyclone, because the detectability range of enemy ships and enemy ships being able to detect you is 8 kilometers away. I think that is a little different with radar. But it's 8 kilometers, right? So then that means that is a fantastic opportunity to be able to push out and be able to brawl with enemy ships. But again, you're always trying to isolate fights, like not 1 versus 4, 1 versus 1, 1 versus 2. if you feel like your ship is well enough to handle what type of two enemy ships you're going up against. So you always want to isolate fights if you have opportunity. Maybe you're using island to block out some of the enemy team enemy players while you're focusing on one enemy player. So that's another opportunity of when to push, of learning when to push. And then learning when not to push. Learn when not to push. I almost just need to have my camera on. You guys can just see my handwriting, but it's all cursive and be upside down. So don't push. Don't push early. We'll call that A. And you will have to learn that you cannot push when there's nothing but HE spammers on your flank. Because if enemy players, when they're in HE spamming ships, usually they're trying to utilize island or if they're kiting away from you. So don't push HE spamming ships. And you might have to learn what are HE spamming ships, right? So this triple Grosser Kurfürst division was in the other a couple days ago. There was a Kiev. It was a Russian tier A destroyer. He was totally gunboating and he had the range, so he could fire on us like 15 kilometers away, I think. There was a division of 2 Carnots. I think those are the French. Is that French tier 9 premium ship? There was a Thunderer. And then later on, there was another enemy destroyer that even came over in the flank, and I think he was a torpedo class destroyer. So we weren't able to do much. I mean, we successfully did end up taking the cap, but it cost us all of our ships in the long run. We weren't able to hold it. And just because they were just constantly HE spamming us. So fire prevention is definitely something that's really needed. So don't push early. B, don't push HE spamming ships. Maybe you could say, don't push if your team's not going to push. And then, let's just say C, don't push into enemy when they outnumber you. When they outnumber you. And I don't mean like, if there's 2 ships because they outnumber you, you shouldn't push forward in your one ship. I mean, when it's like 1 versus 3, definitely 1 versus 4, 1 versus 5, 1 versus 6. I've seen players, even in the FDG and other brawling ships, that, hey, it's 4 minutes in, I'm going to go ahead and push you the cap, and there's like 6 enemy ships waiting for them. And they're going to focus you down because you're the closest big battleship with poor concealment. You're large, you're wide, you're easy to set on fire. So that would be how learning when not to push. Those would be the 3 main things I would say. What else can we look at? Mentally, I have to learn to wait. I think that's the big mental challenge. Because when you're in a brawling battleship, you want to live it out to its purposes. You want to be able to get in there, you want to be able to brawl, but if these things of learning when to push, learning when not to push, like sometimes you're just gonna have to wait. The battle might be 10 minutes in and you've done 20k damage, and then the opportunity finally allows itself for you to push in, and then that's when your damage numbers start ticking up. I think that's been reflected well in this number, where I've had to wait and then be able to push in, because one of the things that's mentally really bad is like feeling when you are almost useless as a team player, because 10 minutes in, I've only done 20,000 damage. What the heck? I hardly even have any secondary hits. But it's learning that long term, this last half of the battle is always the most significant part of any battle, right? But the mentality of having to wait to then identify when you can push in, or you might not ever be able to push in. And I feel like the FDG really lives and breathes by that. So I have to learn what is the server doing better than I am. I'll probably consult some try to find some YouTube videos, maybe potato quality, maybe Sea Raptor, have some good videos in talking about the FDG. I mean, even the gross curves, because they really do play similarly, to figure out what are they doing that I can emulate really better. I will tell you what will also help you improve in FDG, and it's the same for the new German battleship line, is use islands. So that is a huge factor. Use islands. Because when you use islands, it helps lessen how much damage you take. Like, let's say you're pushing up along a flank. I do this in my American Brawling battleships, why I call it island hopping. Especially do this in like even cruisers like Des Moines. When I island hop, I get closer to the enemy team. It lessens how much damage I take. It reduces the threat of me taking torpedoes. So if I come up on the island, I'm not just going to keep full throttle sailing past. I'm going to slow down behind the island maybe for 20, 30 seconds. And then all of a sudden there's this wave of red torpedoes that passes in front of me. So being able to use islands is a huge thing as a Brawling battleship. So now that I look at how can I improve in the FDG, I need to wait for the opportunity to push. I need to learn when to push. Pushing with the team, finding golden opportunities to push. Cyclones are really good opportunities. And I need to learn better when not to push. Don't push early. Don't push into the enemy team if there's a lot of HE spamming ships on my flank. And don't push into the enemy when they outnumber me in a really bad way. And then mentally, again, just having to learn to wait and use islands. So then now I'm going to utilize on trying to these things to help me improve as a better. And I just learned this just from opening up the stats and seeing what's going on here. I'm wondering if I can find the Bismarck, because I know I've played a good number of battles in it. I think I've played it more than FDG. So that was 31. But again, I might not have. No, I have not. Let's go by tier 8. Baltimore. Bismarck. Yeah, there we go. 18 battles. Okay, apparently I was blind. Okay, we can look at this and actually do really good in Bismarck. There's a lot of good things here. I'm above as a player in comparison to the server. So the Bismarck, it didn't feel like a bad to me. I noticed when you go from the Bismarck to the FDG, your concealment is worse, and you are a larger and a wider battleship with poor concealment. That was one of the big things. But as you ascend tier 8, you get into the tier 9 to tier 10 matchmaking, and there are a lot of HE spamming ships. That's been the big thing for me right now in realizing that. So that's just something that I have to learn to be able to become better at. So this video is already over 30 minutes. So I'm going to do another video talking more about the stats, because I want to get into this, breaking this down, identifying, maybe you're like, well, I don't feel like I'm struggling with anything. Like when you talk about ships nations, or maybe you don't realize it as an example. I'm going to come back into this and we're going to review this more and talking about different ways of how you can just learn to improve by your stats, because the WoW stats and numbers is really good for all these things, because it gives you details. I mean, you can see the ships you've been playing as of late, break them down, see what you're doing good or bad. I don't do this very often, just every now and then, like maybe once a month. I just hop in here and kind of see how things are going. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap that up. I am going to have some videos at the end of this video. Unicum mentality, never tell me the odds. This is a really good video. I'd recommend you checking out. Also, the Unicum player and having fun. I was asked this question, and I can even try throwing this Kulsik DD Unicum play, random battle play, so you can see more of that as well. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. So if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you did not, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.